Jon Snow, the White Wolf of the North, the bastard of Winterfell, or perhaps the last hidden Targaryen. Welcome to Hero Examination, where today we dive into one of the most complex figures in both A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones. Jon is a character defined by struggle, duty, and identity, a man who tries to save the realm even when the realm refuses to claim him. But Jon's story is complicated, especially when comparing the books to the show. The series gave us answers, the books still gives us mysteries, and Jon's journey isn't finished yet, not on the page and arguably not even in the show's world. So, let's take a look. Also feel free to like, share, and hit the bell, it would greatly help the channel. Jon grew up both blessed and cursed. On the one hand, he was incredibly lucky for a bastard. He lived in Winterfell, one of the great castles of the north. He trained with Robb Stark under the same master-at-arms. He ate well, learned well, and grew up surrounded by siblings he loved, especially Arya. He admired Ned Stark deeply, absorbed his lessons on honor, leadership, and integrity. In many ways, Jon internalized the Stark code even more fiercely than Robb. But beneath all that privilege was constant agony. Jon was always reminded he wasn't truly a Stark. He never sat at the high table during feasts, and he was always introduced as the bastard. He was close, but never inside the family. As Jon himself reflects, he was of them, but apart. And the two people that reinforced that distance more than anyone else was Sansa Stark and Catelyn Stark. Sansa, raised to be a proper Southern lady, always referred to Jon as her half-brother. She wasn't cruel, just distant, polite, and painfully aware of social expectations. But Catelyn Stark's relationship with Jon was far harsher. In the show, her resentment is simple. Jon is the living reminder of Ned Stark's infidelity. But in the books, it's more layered. Catelyn and Ned barely knew each other when they married. She understood that war forces men into difficult choices. But Jon's presence in Winterfell, permanent, visible, and Stark-looking, was a threat. Her own children had Tully features, auburn hair, and blue eyes. Jon looked like a Stark, perhaps too much like a Stark. She feared that if Jon grew up alongside Robb as a near equal, he could become a political rival, and so she kept him at arm's length, reminding him, intentionally or not, that he was not one of them. This isolation shaped Jon's deepest insecurities and his relentless desire to prove himself. From the beginning of the books, George R.R. Martin draws a subtle but important line between Jon Snow and Robb Stark. When Eddard Stark executes the Night's Watch deserter, Garrett, Robb sees honor in a man's acceptance of death. Jon, however, notices something else entirely: fear. A seasoned ranger shouldn't look terrified. Something was wrong. Jon's instincts proved sharper than Robb's. This early moment reveals Jon's defining trait, being observant. At the dinner table, he senses something off about the Lannisters, Cersei, and Joffrey, long before their cruelty becomes obvious. Jon explains it simply: bastards have to be observant. When you grow up on the margins, you learn to read people, to recognize danger, to understand who sees you as human and who sees you as a stain. This awareness shapes Jon's entire journey. When Bran discovers the direwolf pups, Jon is the one who argues they should be spared. He frames it symbolically. The direwolf is a sigil of House Stark. The pups belong with the Stark children. Ned, ever practical, believes they should be put down. Without their mother, they won't survive. Jon pushes for another way. He looks for solutions, not endings. And then fate intervenes. Jon finds a sixth pup, an albino, white as snow, with red eyes. A creature apart from the others, a creature that stands out, just like Jon. Ghost becomes more than a pet. He becomes a symbol of Jon's identity. Stark, yet not Stark. Part of the pack, yet separate. A silent companion for a boy who often feels voiceless. Later during the feast, a drunken Jon speaks with Benjen Stark and declares his desire to join the Night's Watch. To Jon, the Watch represents honor, adventure, and most importantly, belonging, a place where bloodlines don't matter, where a bastard can become a true brother. Benjen quickly shatters that fantasy. The Watch takes no wives, holds no lands, fathers no children. Come back to me after you fathered a few bastards on your own, was Benjen's response to Jon's request. But this response cuts Jon deeply, which made him respond with the line, "I will never father a bastard," which reveals the resentment he carries. He respects Ned, but he also resents the circumstances of his own birth. This moment plants the seed of Jon's lifelong struggle, the desire to be more than the label the world gave him. We then find out why Jon and Arya are so close. With Arya being a girl and Jon being a bastard, they can't train with Robb and Joffrey. They are the two Stark children who don't quite fit the mold, the misfits, which is ironic because they look the most like a traditional Stark compared to their siblings, and they're the ones who feel the most out of place. Watching Robb and Joffrey train, they share a quiet frustration. Princes get privileges, they never will. Jon gives Arya a needle, a gift that becomes a symbol of her identity, her survival, and her connection to him. It's one of the purest acts of love in the entire series. Before leaving Winterfell, Bran is in a coma from falling from a tower, and Jon insists on saying goodbye to Bran before he goes, despite Catelyn's hostility. Her words, "It should have been you," are some of the cruelest words he ever heard from her, yet Jon lies to Robb, saying she was very kind. He protects the family, even when some family members don't protect him. The moment Jon arrives at Castle Black, the illusion shatters. The Night's Watch isn't a shining order of heroes, it's a reform school, a place for criminals, thieves, orphans, the unwanted, the broken. The brothers Jon meets are not seasoned warriors, they are old men, green boys, and desperate souls with nowhere else to go. Jon feels betrayed by Ned, by Benjen, by the stories he grew up hearing. He expected honor, but instead he found a prison yard. He even begins avoiding Benjen, feeling abandoned and misled. Benjen gives him one piece of advice: you get what you earn, your status won't matter here. Jon doesn't understand it yet, but he will. The training begins, and Jon quickly discovers another harsh truth. His skill makes him a target. Sir Alliser Thorne, bitter and resentful, mocks him as Lord Snow. The other recruits hate him for beating them up so easily. Jon's sarcasm and pride only making things worse. He wants honor, he wants respect, he wants to prove himself, but he also wants friends, and he can't understand why everyone seems to despise him. They insult his mother, they mock his birth, they gang up on him. Jon feels bullied, misunderstood, and alone. Jon vents his frustration to Donald Noye, the one-armed blacksmith who forged Robert's warhammer. Noye gives him the reality check he desperately needs. Jon was raised in a castle, he learned to read, he trained with a master-at-arms. He came to the wall seeking glory. The other boys came to survive. They never held a sword, they never had been taught anything. They lived lives of fear and hunger. Jon realizes he's been acting privileged, arrogant, even cruel, without meaning to. This is the moment Jon begins to change. He starts helping the other boys train. He stops mocking them. He becomes patient, supportive, and observant. And slowly, the Watch begins to feel less like a prison and more like a brotherhood. Then comes Samwell Tarly, overweight, terrified, and utterly unfit for combat. Sam is the worst possible recruit for the Wall, but he didn't choose this life. His father, Randyll Tarly, forced him to take the Black under threat of death. Sam can't fight, he can't run, he can barely hold a sword, and most men mock him. Alliser Thorne wants to break him. But Jon sees something different. He sees Sam's intelligence, his kindness, his ability to read and learn. So Jon protects him. He convinces the others to stop hurting him, and he helps Sam find a place as Maester Aemon's personal steward, a role that uses his strengths instead of exploiting his weaknesses. This is Jon's first true act of leadership, seeing worth where others see weakness. It comes from his own experience as a bastard, someone judged unfairly, someone who had to find his own value. When Benjen disappears, 2 of his men are found with their bodies in a weird state. They have been turned into whites, and one of these whites tries to kill Lord Commander Jorah Mormont. But Jon saves his life, and in return, Mormont gives him Longclaw, a Valyrian steel sword and a symbol of trust, mentorship, and belonging. But Jon's heart is still torn, because traditionally a sword is passed down from father to son, and he feels accepting it would be like replacing Ned. When Ned is accused of treason, Jon dreams of Ice, the Stark family's sword, and imagines himself wielding it. But he feels guilty, because Ice belongs to Robb. Jon wants to be a true Stark, yet he refuses to take what isn't his. Maester Aemon warns him, love is the death of duty. Aemon speaks from experience, as a Targaryen who stayed on the wall during Robert's rebellion. Jon doesn't yet understand the weight of those words, but he will. When Ned is executed and Robb declares war, Jon snaps. He rides south, determined to join Robb's army and die like a true Stark. It's reckless, it's emotional, and it's painfully human. Jon is willing to throw away his vows, his future, and his life, all for love. But his brothers chase him down and bring him back to the wall. Jorah reminds him deserting won't bring Ned back, joining Robb's army won't change the war, dying won't give him justice, and the wall needs him more than the South does. Jon realizes he's right. The war in the South is political, but the war in the North, the true North, is essential. For the first time, he accepts that his life belongs to the Night's Watch, at least for now. When Jon Snow rides north beyond the wall, he believes he's finally stepping into the heroic life he always imagined for himself, the life of a true ranger. The stories he grew up with painted the Night's Watch as a noble order of warriors who fought monsters, defended the realm, but the further Jon travels, the more those stories crumble. This journey is where Jon's worldview fractures, and where the boy who wanted glory begins to transform into a man who must choose between duty, morality, and identity. Jon expected adventure, what he finds is hardship. The Rangers ride through freezing rain, the food is barely edible, they sleep in mud, snow, and sometimes not at all. Every miserable mile north strips away another layer of Jon's childhood fantasies. This is not the glorious life of the songs, this is survival, brutal, exhausting, and thankless. And Jon begins to question what he truly wants. The expedition stops at Craster's Keep. Craster is a man who marries his own daughters, abuses his wives, rules through fear, and trades shelter for weapons. He is openly, proudly evil. Yet the Night's Watch tolerates him. They rely on him. They look the other way. They pretend not to see the horror. Gilly, one of Craster's wives, begs Jon to take her newborn son, but Jon refuses. The Watch can't shelter babies. But then she says something that cuts Jon deeply. Your brother is king in the north. A king protects his people. Jon feels the sting immediately. Robb is being sung about in halls across the north. Robb is winning battles. Robb is becoming a legend. And Jon is freezing in a wildling's hovel, powerless to help anyone. It reminds him how stuck he is, how far he is from the glory he once dreamed of. Then Jon discovers a painful truth. Craster sacrifices his sons to the White Walkers. Jon confronts Jorah Mormont about this, and he admits he has always known. The Watch tolerates this horror because they need Craster's shelter, because duty demands compromise, because survival requires alliances with evil men. Jon is horrified. This violates everything Ned Stark taught him, everything Jon believed the Night's Watch stood for, everything he thought Benjen represented. He begins to fear the longer he stays, the more he will become like them, cynical, compromised, and numb. The expedition continues north, and for a moment Jon feels alive again. He tracks wildlings, he fights and kills one, and he sees the vast beauty of the true north. He feels like a ranger, like the hero he had always wanted to be. But then he meets Ygritte, a wildling girl, a prisoner, and a reminder that the world is not as simple as Winterfell taught him. Jon's duty is clear, kill her, but Jon remembers Ned Stark's words. You must look into a person's eyes and see if they deserve to die. Jon looks into Ygritte's eyes and sees no evil, and so he cannot kill her. This is the moment Jon's loyalty to the Watch begins to fracture, not out of rebellion, but out of compassion. Jon has heard stories of Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall, a former Night's Watch ranger who deserted because he can no longer obey the Watch's rigid rules. For the first time, Jon begins to understand him. The Watch demands obedience, even when obedience means ignoring evil, abandoning innocence, killing without question, and compromising your soul. Qhorin Halfhand becomes Jon's next mentor and his next moral test. He tells Jon to lead men, you must know them. It's advice that foreshadows Jon's future, not just among the free folk, but in the larger story of Westeros. But Qhorin also gives Jon an order that will haunt him. To infiltrate the wildlings, Jon must pretend to desert, earn their trust, and if necessary, kill Qhorin himself. This is not honor. This is not stark justice. This is espionage, manipulation, moral compromise. He must compromise his Stark identity, the identity he loves, for the sake of his black cloak. Jon dreams through Ghost's eyes and sees his siblings scattered, and sensing one of them dying. It's a reminder of everything he's losing, everything he's leaving behind, everything he still loves. At the wildling camp, Qhorin forces Jon's hand, attacking him, demanding Jon kill him to maintain the ruse. Jon obeys, and he kills Qhorin. He becomes a deserter, and he joins the Free Folk. Did he betray the Watch, or did he follow its orders? He did what he was told, but what he was told was something the Night's Watch would never publicly admit to doing. Jon begins to question everything. Who is he? What does duty mean? What does honor mean? Is he a Stark or a Crow? A protector of the realm or a traitor? This is Jon's moral fracture, the moment he realized that the world would not allow him to be the kind of hero he dreamed of being. Jon's first shock comes when he meets Mance Rayder. He initially assumes the intimidating, earless, thin warrior is the king beyond the wall. That man fits the stories, brutal, harsh, everything a wildling king should be. But then Jon discovers the truth. Mance is the man playing music by the fire, who he might have mistaken for a bard, a man who laughs easily. This moment shatters Jon's assumptions. Kings in the South sit on thrones, wrapped in ceremony and power. But here, leadership is earned, not inherited. The Free Folk feel more like a family than an army. Jon begins to understand why Mance left the Watch. He was once healed by a wildling woman who gifted him a cloak made from her most precious possessions. When he returned to the Watch, he was ordered to burn it, a symbol of rigid rules over human kindness. So he left. Life among the Free Folk is tempting. Jon is not judged for being a bastard. He's not treated as lesser. He is not bound by rigid hierarchy. There is freedom here, intoxicating freedom. But most of all, it's a family that can be of his choosing. He always felt like he was not one of the Starks, and the Night's Watch is less of a family of brothers and more like a place for the rejects. However, the wildlings are also brutal. The Free Folk raid, steal, and kill. They have no unified code of honor. Some clans like the Thenns are outright terrifying. Jon is caught between two worlds. The Watch, which claims honor but compromises with monsters like Craster, or the Free Folk, who offer freedom but embrace violence and chaos. The longer Jon stays with the Free Folk, the more he relies on Ghost, his last connection to Winterfell. His dreams grow stronger, more vivid. Jon clings to his Stark identity because it is the one thing he has left, at least for now. And ironically, the person who made him cling to it the most was Catelyn Stark. Her coldness, her insistence that he is not a true Stark, her refusal to see him as family, all of it fueled Jon's desire to prove her wrong, to prove that he is a Stark in all the ways that matter. If he abandons that identity now, he fears he will be proving her right. So even as he lies to Mance Rayder, even as he kills a wildling to protect the wall, even as he breaks his vows for the sake of survival, Jon is desperately trying to hold on to the part of himself that feels like home. And then there's Ygritte. At first, Jon Snow sees her as just another wildling, stubborn and sharp-tongued, but the more time they spend together, the more she reveals her warmth, her humor, and her fierce loyalty. She challenges him, she tempts him, she opens his eyes. Her worldview is simple and devastating. The gods made the land for everyone. Why should Southern kings claim ownership for what was once free? She even suggests that the Starks themselves may have wildling blood, that Jon's identity is not as fixed as he believes. Jon is 16, lonely, confused, and torn between two worlds. Ygritte becomes his anchor and his undoing. He breaks his vows with her, not in spirit, but in body. And for a moment, he allows himself to imagine a life without duty. However, Jon gets a lucky break when he refuses to kill the old man the free folk were hunting. And then, as if guided by fate, Bran's warging creates a storm that gives Jon the chance to escape. When Jon returns to Castle Black, he brings vital information. The free folk's plan is to scatter the Watch and attack the wall directly. And due to this, the Watch is hopelessly outnumbered. But Jon and Donal Noye find simple, clever solutions, cutting the rope bridge and using gravity and terrain to their advantage. Jon's creativity comes from his upbringing as not the best swordsman, so he learned to think differently. But victory comes with heartbreak. Ygritte dies in Jon's arms, and her worldview shapes him long after her death. The free folk attack the wall again, but their tactics are poor. They charge blindly, and the Watch continuously rains arrows and stones upon them. Jon sees the futility of it all, the senselessness of the two groups fighting when the true enemy is the White Walkers. And then reinforcements arrive. Alistair Thorne and Janos Slynt, the former head of the City Watch that Tyrion sent to the wall. Instead of praising Jon, they belittle him, call him a traitor, use his bastardy status against him. The free folk never treated him this way, but his brothers do. Jon begins to realize the Watch may never truly accept him. Jon is sent on a suicide mission, a punishment disguised as duty. He expects to die, but instead he finds Mance Rayder ready to negotiate. Mance is tired of the bloodshed. His people are dying, and the true enemy, the White Walkers, are coming. Jon sees the truth. There are no winners here, only survivors. And then, to both of their surprise, Stannis Baratheon arrives, scattering the free folk and capturing Mance. Stannis offers Jon everything he wanted. Legitimacy, Winterfell, a noble marriage to vow, a wildling princess, a home, a future, and a chance to be a true Stark. It is the ultimate temptation, the life Jon has always dreamed of since childhood. But there are conditions. Jon must abandon his Night Watch vows. He must renounce the old gods. He must burn the weirwood tree, the tree Ned Stark prayed beneath. Jon realizes that if he accepts, he will not be reclaiming his identity, he will be surrendering it. And then Ghost returns. He disappeared while Jon was with the free folk. Jon sees the direwolf's white fur and red eyes, mirroring the face of the weirwood tree. And in that moment he understands. His Stark identity is not something Stannis can give, it is something he already has. Winterfell is a place. Being a Stark is a truth. And Jon chooses the truth.